Hey everybody, it's Ivory and Matt from Bruh Code. Hope you guys having a great day today. And in this installation of this version, we want to talk about things we wish we would have known in our 20s. And this last week we talked about home ownership. This week we want to talk about relationships, and we're going to dive right in there. How you doing today, Matt?
Oh, I'm good, bro. A little cold out here, and it's so cold in the D, man. But it is what it is.
I know it kind of reminded me of that song, It's So Cold in the D.
That's why I said.
It was kind of depressing actually, but no, man, this is really an important topic. And the reason why I feel like it's an important topic is because, again, when you talking about relationships, nobody really give you like a blueprint of successful relationships. I know I didn't have that growing up. Matt didn't have that growing up. So we want to talk about three things that we wish we would have known in our 20s that we know now. So the first thing we want to talk about is knowing yourself. And so, Matt, if you want to chime in first and just kind of share like like what knowing yourself, how that could better your life in terms of having a relationship, intimate relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it's just being honest about what kind of person you are. Like, I know for me, like, I talk a lot of junk. That's my personality. I can be kind of intense. Like I know, for instance, for me, I never was the most romantic person, but I was more of a like free spirited type person. Not to say what I mean by free spirit is that I'm the kind of person who would just kind of like, have an interesting career path, travel, kind of be more like, kind of just have a more kind of, I always wanted kind of more exciting life. So, one of the things too is just knowing who I was and finding somebody else who was looking for that, right? Because if somebody wants somebody that's more romantic and you're not the most romantic person, they're going to feel cheated out of that. But if somebody says, you know what, man, I'd love to go to Cuba and work for a little bit of time, or I'd love to travel or kind of just do these kind of interesting things or have these kind of interesting careers. You can kind of take that journey with them. So that's one of the things that kind of came to mind to me, is just knowing myself. And I think also one of the things too is that, obviously somebody who really wanted a strong family structure, who wanted to create that, somebody who wanted to be the old people on the wall, the patriarch and the matriarch, right? I think I wanted that because I didn't, so I knew I had to be with somebody who was trying to build their own version of their family and start it. Some people just wanted to be a part of a family that's already existed. So I think that's some of the things that come to mind for me.
Wow, man, that's powerful, man. That's kind of like a combination of things. And I would say pretty much for me, very similar. I would just add to knowing yourself in terms of like your personal blueprint, like the inner work, the inner part of yourself, meaning your values, your principles, your morals. Like for me, those things were important. Like just knowing that me as a Christian, as a believer, as a follower of Christ, that's very, very important to me. So I I would not date somebody who doesn't believe the same things I believe in terms of my faith, spirituality. It just wouldn't be a compatible thing. I would also say someone who's not aligned with your long-term goals as well as the short-term goals. Someone who's not aligned with that. I had to know for myself who I was and where I wanted to go long term, and so it just helped me to make better decisions in terms of what kind of woman you would seek out. Because once you know your principles, your values, your morals, like you have a core belief, like a core value of who you are, it makes it so much easier to weed out like 95% of the women that does not align with that. So for me, knowing myself, knowing what type of person that I wanted to be, my character, my ethics, my morals, those things were very, very, very important to me. So it just kind of kept me away from certain things. And so I would say knowing those parts about myself really helped me. And I think if I was in my 20s, if I would have been more strong with that, I would have like avoided a lot of heartaches that I endured in relationships.
No, I completely agree, man. Those was definitely good points, man.
Yeah. So I would also say number two, like let's talk a little bit about this. I want to say like potential.
Yeah, yeah,
Think
yeah.
about it. For us guys, the first thing we notice, what's the first thing you notice when you meet a woman or you see a woman, bro?
Man, their body.
Exactly, right? The cheeks, like you see the body, right? And to be honest with you, for me, I like women I like very physically attractive women, like facial features, hair, like voice, feminine. just certain body features I like. I'm like instantly attracted to those things. So for me, like for me, you can kind of get caught up in between the physical features and ignore the other stuff. So you start dating for potential, like, oh man, she sounds like a fun person to be around, or he seems like a cool person, and you get caught up into like this potential of what this person could be because you start romanticizing and start fantasizing. And I did a lot of that, and I ended up in relationships with women who were not the right fit for me because we didn't have the same morals, values, principles, ethics, etc. So yeah, man, kind of talk a little bit about that from your perspective, Matt.
No, from my perspective, man, I don't know, man. I think like when I think back on it too, you know, I'm really thinking, man, like, for me, like, I obviously it was bro, I completely blanked out, bro. I just lost my train of
No, just not dating on potential. Like,
yeah. Sorry, my bad. So no, I think it's true. It's like, a lot of times, man, you ever see like your favorite team draft a player, man, like, oh man, he ran a 4.4. Man,
yeah,
get all that, bro. You know what I'm saying? Hey, how does this dude look like when he put on pads? You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
oh, he ran a 4.4, man. He had a 45-inch vertical. That's how it is in relationships, man. It's like, oh man, she was so supportive. Like, why, man? Oh man, because she made me a sandwich when I was sad. Man, get out of here with that weakness, man. Like, so a lot of times people just see, like, they see a glimpse of something and they think that that's going to be, they project that onto certain circumstances. And what happens is that, you kind of think that this person's going to develop. Man, you gotta take that person for where they are at the moment.
absolutely.
And I also think too, is like, I know for me, like, I've always struggled with different things, but I know I've always, like, from my background, I always had to kind of push through certain things. And that's not always the norm. Most people don't. Most people, by the time they get into their 20s and like late 20s, early 30s, they are who they are, man. So you gotta just be able to understand, like, hey, if this person is not checking for you in this kind of way, they probably won't ever check for you in that kind of way. You know, especially if they weren't culturally or socially, like, prepped to do that. If it wasn't something that they were taught, they just probably won't really develop it.
Yeah.
I think that's just one of the things. So it's like, I mean, you could date for potential all day long. Don't get upset if you end up 3 and 13, man. You know, a whole bunch.
No, that's a good point. And to piggyback on that, to give you guys an example, I remember when I dated a woman who was physically, to my eye, she passed the eye test, like sexy, everything that I like physically. However, like I didn't realize some of the other things that I didn't notice because I fell in love with her through my eyes. And I saw her and I didn't realize the first date we went on like the very, very first date we went on, she was 2 hours late, like 2 hours late to the date. And I didn't even really catch on to it because I was just so caught up into her physically that I didn't even realize that she was 2 hours late to the date. I mean, because I really wanted to connect with her. I really wanted to get to know her. And basically, like I was projecting onto her my physical attraction, my high level of attraction on her, but I didn't see all the other stuff that I noticed, like, okay, this might not line up for us. This may not be a long-term situation for me. And and eventually it didn't work, but I didn't see that because I was dating on potential. I thought potentially, man, we look good on paper, right? You hear so many people say that. Even Matt made a reference to the sports teams. I mean, you think about like, oh man, LeBron, Russell, Westbrook, and AD, man. I mean, like you looking at all this stuff on paper, but you have to actually go out and play the game, and sometimes it just doesn't work. And so basically, what we're saying is don't date on potential. Like that's one thing I could do if I can go back over it again in my 20s, I would not date on potential.
I completely agree.
Yeah. And so I would say also the third thing, what's one of the third things I would think is like dating somebody or connecting with someone who's really into you. Like this was a big thing for me. I chased a lot of women who maybe liked my potential or like certain aspects of me, but they didn't really like me as a person. Right. And what I mean by that is that like I'm a multifaceted person. I'm a very complex person. It's just no one side, one trick pony with Ivory. Like Ivory, I got a lot of different interests, a lot of different tastes, hobbies, goals. I'm kind of all over the place in so many ways. And when you're talking to women and you're talking to somebody and you're in a relationship with that person, you want them to kind of study you a little bit. You want them to kind of learn things about you, some inside jokes, like some of your personality, your quirks, and to be able to accommodate for some of those things. And if I was in my 20s, I would have really tried to focus on finding someone who was really into me instead of into my potential, into my wallet, or into like, anything other than myself.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that, man, because it's like, I've dated women who were into me, they just weren't into my past, like,
they went into the past.
past, like, man, you broke, what I'm saying? Oh, your father's alcoholic. Oh, I don't want to deal with that, man. If that's also a part of you,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I remember being like in my early 20s, I was like, man, I don't come from Jack. I realized that. And I think that it also set up a certain like reality from the future that, like my 20s, like whoever dated me, it was going to be a little bit difficult in the beginning because, I'm figuring out everything from scratch. And, something like they're not with that, man. They don't want to deal with those problems. And these are not always problems that you created. It's just, sometimes how you grew up, what you grew up in, the circumstances, the environment, these things are just part of what ends up happening, and I think sometimes people just don't want to deal with that. And then you got to let people make that choice. And, and sometimes if people don't accept your reality, even if they like you a lot, they, that's also part of them kind of not accepting you. And you have to be okay with that. Have to be completely okay.
Wow. No, you're absolutely right about that. And that's powerful. That's like a powerful thing. So those are kind of like, to kind of shorten and concise this and make it a short video, just want to summarize the 3 things that we would do differently in our 20s now that we're in our 30s, if we can go back over and do it again. One is really getting to know ourselves, like knowing who you are as a person from the internal, then to the external. So playing inside out. 2 is not dating or being in relationships based on potential. Like you don't want to date somebody based on potential or what they could be in the future. But like Matt was saying, like really knowing this person not better than what they are, not worse than what they are, but as they are. And 3, just really dating somebody or being in a relationship with somebody who's really into you. Like they like you. And like Matt also said, your background like that, because that is a part of who you are today. So those are 3 things that if we could do it all over again, we would do those things differently. Now, obviously, no one's perfect, but I think that's a good blueprint that kind of help the younger brothers out to say, hey, man, you want to kind of avoid the superficial stuff and really focus on some more tangible things so you can, potentially land a woman who is high quality in her earlier years so you guys can build a future together. Any last things you want to say, Matt?
Yeah, man. And then you got to stop getting out of these like these generic high qualities, man. Like I always say, man, dudes be like heights, just size, weight. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of, women like you 6 figures, like, bro, that's not high quality, man. Like that's not, right. So you got to get out of that generic stuff, man, and start actually getting to who people are.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, 100%. It seemed like the landscape is really focused externally. Yeah. Like what your body looks like, how much money you make, what's your career. But the real spiritual growth and the real growth happens on the inside when you know like what type of person you are and the compatibility with another person. And that's can actually make the relationship last a little bit longer. So yeah, great stuff, Matt, man. Good conversation. And hopefully next week we want to share with you guys another lesson or something else that we would have done differently in our 20s. But until next time, if you guys like this content like this, please, we highly suggest you to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who could be a benefit. And we'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah, take care, everybody.